Hello everyone, welcome to the 6th Winter 2015-2016 update from GazWebBiz.com. We've done 5 updates so far. This is the 6th one. We're over halfway now with these updates. Can you believe we're over halfway through the season? We reached halfway point, I think, last week. So, yeah, we're going to get several things together. As you know, I've been watching these videos through the course of the autumn, you know, kind of thing we're doing, looking at sea surface temperature, what's going on with El Nino. We'll have a look at Siberian snow cover, hurricane activity in the North Atlantic, etc., etc., to see how things are progressing. And this is all building up to the final and official GazWebBiz.com Winter 15-16 forecast, which will be released on the 1st of December. So we're painting a picture, we're building a storyline, we're looking for patterns to emerge as we're running through, and it all builds up, of course, to the final winter forecast. So all of these updates are important in their own way to building a picture for when we get to the 1st of December and we have to release the GazWebBiz.com Winter 2015-2016 forecast. Now, in the 5th update last week, I explained that this is looking like very much a one-off, very much unique winter in terms of what the oceans are doing here, in terms of the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. I was really happy struggling to find years that are closely matched to what is going on. Actually managed to find a couple of years from my good friend Stuart Markham. So we'll have a look at a couple of years that Stuart has come up with, going a very, very long way back and having to use reanalysis for that. They're not exact matches, but they are reasonably close to the current situation. Also, in the comment box a few days ago at GazWebBiz, David posted some reanalysis from the winter I've been talking about a lot through these updates. He's been following the storyline. You know, we've been talking a lot about winter of 1885, 1886. We've got a couple of reanalysis charts for the oceans during the autumn of 1885 as well. Not all that far away from where we are now. So we'll explain it all as we go along. But before I get on with that, just very quickly to make sure the ads at GazWebBiz, there's links like yours on all the pages, so you can have a browse widgets and click through the links. You'll be helping to pay for the website, and thanks very much for doing that. There's also video ads on most of the pages which open up in the content. When you watch them, they'll close back up again. It's all helping to pay for GazWebBiz.com, so thanks so much for getting involved. And thanks for doing that. Just to say that later on at GazWebBiz, I'll be doing a second update for Christmas. Did the first update a couple of weeks ago, just for fun, really, just to start off the Christmas page. So did it a couple of weeks ago. I'll have another go at it this afternoon, post a couple of charts from the CFS V2. And in a couple of weeks, when we get into the start of November, the actual winter updates will begin on YouTube with the videos, and they'll be embedded through to the website and all of that kind of thing. But today's update, again, same as a couple of weeks ago, just a written report. So you're expecting a Christmas update to turn up on YouTube. It won't be a video. That's going to be starting mode very shortly now. We'll be starting those Christmas updates at the start of November. Right, I've spoken far too long, so let's get on with the 6th Winter 15-16 update. Going to start off with the ocean. Going to start off with where we was when we did the update last week. So, of course, as you know, if you've been watching these on a regular basis, there's the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean. We're interested in what's going on through the equatorial Pacific in terms of the El Nino. We're interested in what's going on up here in the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean, and we're also interested in the cold blob that we've got in the Atlantic Ocean. Been a lot spoken about the cold blob recently. That is the cold blob, and that's going to have some sort of impact probably on our winter weather. But quite what it will be, we've got to wait and see. And of course, that will go into the final forecast. So let's see how things have developed over the past week anyway. Sorry about that, I wasn't sure what's happening with the page clicking over. There we go. So the page clicked over for me anyway. I hope it's clicked over for you. So this is the latest chart from NOAA in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies with the Pacific and Atlantic, our particular focus. You can see there's been probably a little bit more warming through the equatorial Pacific. Actually, if we go back to the 8th of October, and then go through to the latest chart from the 15th, back forward. I think there's been a little bit more warming through the central part of the equatorial Pacific. Anyway, what we're looking for here is a Modoki El Nino to set up. So we're looking for it to be warmer in the central part of the equatorial Pacific, in this sort of area, and then cooler around here. We don't have it yet. It's just a uniform El Nino effect, just a regular El Nino with the warmth in the east and going through to the central part, generally fairly uniform. In fact, maybe a little bit warmer here compared to here, although I'm not sure about that. But anyway, you can get the idea that this isn't a Modoki or a Modaiki El Nino. It's just a uniform El Nino event at this stage. Now, it could well evolve to a Modoki El Nino by the time we get through to the winter. I don't want to write it off, but I was expecting to be starting to see a little bit more sign of it really emerging as a central-based El Nino by this point. Now, it's very early days. It's only October. By the time you get to Christmas and into January, it could well be that we'll have a central-based El Nino with it warmer here and cooler here. Although, of course, that probably won't help me. If it happens in January, then that's not going to help with winter forecast, because I've got to come up with the winter forecast on the 1st of December. So I'm hoping that over the next couple of weeks, we'll start to see evidence of this El Nino becoming central based. But at the moment, it isn't all that central based. It's just a general uniform El Nino. The reason it's important to get a central based El Nino is that it helps to lower pressure through the southern states, enhancing the southern branch of the jet stream, the southern jet stream, through the south of America, and that helps to tie in then with a cold winter for America, because it's allowed cold shots to come down from the north. And of course, if that southern branch of the jet stream carries on through the Atlantic like this, with the northern branch sort of going off up here somewhere, then that allows us to get blocking in place for us. So it's not always the case that a central-based El Nino is good news for a cold winter for us, but it's kind of what we want to be seeing, particularly for America, because it's more of an effect for America, that it does enhance the southern jet stream in the States and gives them an increased chance of a cold winter, central-based El Nino. That can sometimes, not always, but sometimes goes with our winter weather as well. So we continue to look for a Modoki or a Modaiki El Nino. In any case, as I was explaining last week, it's going to be a really strong El Nino. It is a really strong El Nino. Certainly going to be the strongest since 97, 98. 97, 98 was the all-time record strongest El Nino. It could possibly be even stronger than that, so this might be the all-time record. I think that's probably quite unlikely, but I wouldn't entirely rule out the prospects. It's going to be, and it is, a very big El Nino event. Now up here, we've had a little bit more cooling again in this part of the Pacific Ocean. So if we go back to last week, that situation last week, up there this week, not quite so much blue, but I think generally it is slowly cooling down. I don't think it'll have all that much impact really on what's going on this winter. It's still warmer than you would expect it to be typically this part of the Pacific Ocean. It's normally a very cold place up there. So yeah, I think basically it is cooling very, very slowly, very gradually. Probably won't have all that much of an impact. And what I think the setup we'll get for America is that we'll have low pressure in here, we'll have high pressure through here, and then going down to here across many parts of Canada, and then we'll have this southern jet stream going something like that through southern and eastern parts of America. So it implies a mild dry winter up in the north. It implies a wet winter, of course, around this Pacific coast, and it implies perhaps very wet through southern states, and as this jet stream curves north up the eastern seaboard, could be really quite snowy in the east as it engages colder air coming down from north. Because although it's milder than average across Canada, it will still, because it's a Canadian winter, so if that cold air is displaced down into the States and it meets that southerly tracking jet stream up the eastern seaboard, there could be the prospect of some snow there. In terms of the cold blob, let's go back again. That situation last week in the Atlantic going forward. Perhaps moderated a little bit, actually, that cold anomaly, but it's not going anywhere. It's still very much there through the central part of the Northern Atlantic Ocean. Notice fairly warm through the tropical Atlantic as well, above average sea surface temperature anomalies there. So, yeah, it's not really changing what's going on in the Atlantic. The situation seems very stable at the moment. Colder in central northern parts of the North Atlantic, fairly warm through the tropics, fairly warm going up this eastern coast. As I've explained, this is a very unique scenario, and I can't find, certainly going back to the mid and early 1980s, as we did last week, I can't find a year that quite matches this in terms of the very warm Pacific and the colder North Atlantic. Now, our good friend Stuart, who does a lot of, gives a lot of help for us with these winter updates, Stuart Markham from the website chorleyweather.com, and this is Stuart's website, chorleyweather.com. You find a link to it on the links page. He's come up with a couple of reanalysis charts that might be reasonably close to the situation this winter. That update from Stuart that you're looking at just there, by the way, is JMA long range model hinting at cold. I haven't read that, but when I'm done recording this, I'm going to go off and have a read of that, because that sounds very, very interesting, doesn't it? As I say, we'll be looking at the seasonal models next week. But that's Stuart's website, so do check it out if you get the chance. So Stuart's done some reanalysis for us to try and find some matches to the very unique sea surface, sea ocean temperature anomalies that we've got going on at the moment. So this is the reanalysis chart for September 2015. We can't do October because we're still in October, so this is as close as we can get to the current situation. Notice we've got the El Nino here through the central part of the Equatorial Pacific. We've got all this warmth up here, or warmer than average anyway, and then we've got the cold blob in the Atlantic with warmth through the tropics and going up to the east seaboard. Very unique and unusual patterns in both the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans this year. So the 2 years Stuart has managed to match for us is 1905 and 1930. As I say, not absolute perfect matches, but this is the reanalysis for 1905 and September 1905, I should say. And if we go back to September 2015, see, it's not a perfect match, but it is close. We've got this El Nino through the Pacific Ocean. We've got the warmth up here, warmer than average across the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean. We have got a cold blob in the Atlantic, not as deep or as extensive as a cold blob got at the moment. Actually, it's a bit warmer to the south of Greenland, and it's a bit cooler around Newfoundland. But overall, that's not too bad in terms of trying to match up. So maybe 1905, 1906 is a winter to look at. The other year is 1930, and I don't think this is as close, really. It is perhaps close in terms of what the El Nino is doing. Very strong El Nino looks like going on there in September 1930. Very warm in the northeast Pacific. So the Pacific's okay, but the Atlantic looks significantly different to where we are now. So go back to situation now and see how much colder it is now in the northern Atlantic with that cold blob compared to 1930. It's not that far away, it's not a million miles away, but I think 1905 is the closer match, really. So have a look at what the winter of 1905-1906 was like. This is from Trevor Harley's website. This is the Central England temperature from Trevor Harley's website. So December 1905 comes out at 4.9, quite a cold month. And incidentally, October 1905 was the coldest on record. Coldest recorded October at 7.1. So December was quite cold at 4.9. Well, about average, really. That's not all that cold, actually, for December. So close to average in 1905. January 1906, quite mild at 5.3, but February, cold at 3.1, and quite a cold March and quite a cold April as well. So the idea there is that fairly mild for the first part of the winter, but a cold end to winter and a fairly cold spring. In fact, all of the spring months, May as well, 1906, was colder than average. So it looks like, if you watch the live broadcast I did with Quantum on Friday night, you'll know that there is this idea in some of the model output that we get colder later, and certainly that's the way the winter of 1905-1906 played out, but it started off quite mild, and then it progressed to a colder outlook. If you want to have a look at what happened in 1930, winter of 1930-1931, I find all of this really fascinating. Do check out these historic websites if you can. But the winter of 1930-1931, again, close to average for temperatures in December at 4.3, quite a cold January at 3.2, and quite a cold February at 3.9. Quite a cold March at 4.2, cold April at 7.7. So again, the idea, fairly mild start off with November 1930, fairly mild at 6.2, by the way. So quite mild to start off with, then progressing colder. Interesting that the years that are, they're not identical, but years that are fairly close to where we are right now in terms of the Pacific and the Atlantic, have this idea playing out that we get colder later. I did say that David has had a look at the same website that Stuart was looking at to get some reanalysis for 1885, 1886. The winter that we've been talking about on and off throughout all of these updates. The winter from solar cycle 12 that matches where we are in the current solar cycle. Now, what's evident about winter of 1885, 1886, it was a cold winter, as we've explained in earlier updates. It was a central-based El Nino. It's a Madoki El Nino. So we've got this warm anomaly through the central part of the Pacific Ocean, and then it's cooler towards the Peruvian side. That's exactly what we're looking for, to get a central base Madoki El Nino. It looks like the winter of 1885, 1886 was a weak central based Madoki, however you pronounce it, El Nino. In terms of the Atlantic scenario, you see the Atlantic did go quite cold around the UK. This is for November 1885, and it was quite cold in the Atlantic then, but milder in the Central Atlantic, so that doesn't really match to where we are now. But thanks so much to David and for Stuart for giving me these charts, allowing me to use these charts. Always fascinating to look back at what happened in past years. Now, going on to something completely different. This is the solar disk on our side of this today from solarham.net. We had a little bit of an increase in solar activity, sunspot activity in the past few days. We're actually back to low levels today when I'm doing the video on Saturday, but I've got a few sunspots, and that one there actually looks fairly intense. Otherwise, they don't look too bad. This is from James Ackrell. This is the graph, the running graph of solar activity from last winter to present that we use every update now. We throw these ones in. So we know what happened at the end of September. We got quite a big ramp up in activity there. Then into early October, we dropped down significantly. As I say, over the past few days, we have ticked up a little bit, but we're still fairly low, really, with the activity. We're nowhere up to here where it was at the end of September. So it looks like we're gradually reducing solar activity, but as I've explained, we may get one last final ramp up in activity that lasts longer than this. It's just a few days of an increase of a ramp up, but we may actually find that we get a ramp up that goes on for quite some time, maybe a month or two, before we definitively drop down into solar minimum. We can't say when that's going to happen yet. If it coincides with the winter months, we're unlucky if it does, but if it does, that will probably have an impact on lessening the chance of blocking this winter. Hurricane activity next, and nothing really happening there. Very quiet hurricane season once again. So I don't think this has changed from last week. Actually, we've had 11 depressions in the tropical Atlantic, 10 storms, 3 hurricanes, and 2 major category 3 or above hurricanes. Nothing really altering there compared to what it was last week. So it's going to be another quiet hurricane season. This is the third one in succession that's been pretty quiet. QBO, I haven't spoken about this for a little while, but we're going into the westerly QBO. That is indicated by this grey area just here. Westerly QBO enhances the zonal westerlies around the northern hemisphere, so that in theory goes against the chance of blocking. It's not that straightforward. Going to have a look at this in an update, probably it may be the next one we do, the first Sunday in November. If it's not then, it'll be shortly after that in-depth look at the QBO. But we're going into Westerly QBO for this winter, or we will have a Westerly QBO for this winter quasi-biennial oscillation, and it basically implies that we'll increase the zonal westerlies. What we're going to have to do, I think, as we get into November, we're going to have to look at the years about the Westerly QBOs that go with El Ninos. And we can go a long way back with this, actually. We can go all the way back to 1953 just here. So that will be coming up in an update next month. And then finally having a look at what's going on in terms of Siberian snow cover. So this is the, or this was the image on, excuse me, Saturday the 10th of October. And we had a very dramatic increase last weekend. I didn't manage to get it into the update that I did last week, but we did have a very dramatic increase across Russia, and particularly Western Russia, last weekend. So we had a lot of snow almost going to the gates of Europe, but that did recede back actually as we went through the week. What happened is that the snow, because it's very early in the year, it just gradually receded back through the course of this week. So this is where we end up anyway on Friday the 16th of October. This is the latest chart when I'm doing the video on Saturday afternoon, and we're still doing very well really in historic terms. I'll show you the archive, and we're still doing okay. We haven't got the snow to the gates of Europe, but it's only the 16th of October, and generally the snow cover that we have got across Russia is pretty good for this time of the year. So just fine having a look through the archive of snow charts from the National Ice Centre. This is a situation in 1999 on the 16th of October, and clearly we've got way more snow this year compared to what we had in 1999. As we have 2000, we're ahead of 2000, way ahead of 2000, and 2001. I think 2002, we're probably behind 2002, so that's one of the years that we're behind a little bit. Not a great deal in it though, if we have a look at that and then go back to this situation this year on Friday the 16th of October 2015. Go back to 2002, not a great deal in it, but a little bit more in 2002. 2003, nothing compared to what we've got now. We're ahead of 2004 as well, ahead of 2005, very close to 2006, although probably got a bit more in the west and less in the south. So overall coverage in terms of percentage terms, probably very closely matched actually. We're ahead of 2007, ahead of 2008. 2009 is an interesting one, very interesting year, because we're ahead of in terms of Russia, but we're lagging well behind in terms of Scandinavia. 2009 was quite an interesting year in that Scandinavia built up the snow cover very quickly, and Russia built it up much more slowly, and that is a very unusual scenario to get. So that was a really unique year, 2009. As we know, what happened in 2009 is that we had a really cold winter, 09-10. If we have a look at what's going on in Scandinavia now, so this is from, again, 2015, very little compared to this point in 2009 over Scandinavia in terms of the snow cover. But as I say, that was a very unique year in 2009. 2010, we're ahead in terms of snow cover in 2010, as we are 2011, as we are 2012, although 2012 did have a very rapid increase a few days on from this actually. 2013, I think we're ahead of 2013. And probably 2014, what do we think about that? Probably a bit more in 2014 last year in terms of Scandinavia and western and central parts of Russia as well. But overall, we're not doing too badly at all for snow cover to increase across Russia again this year. It's building up really quite quickly, certainly compared to many of the years through the archive. It's only really 2002 and last year, 2014, that are ahead of us. Otherwise, we're ahead of all years in terms of the snow cover spreading across the Siberian plain. Now that feeds back, if it spreads quickly across Russia, as it is doing this year, it can feed back to an increased strength of the Siberian high and an increased chance of blocking for the winter. But as we saw last year, despite that rapid increase in snow cover, we didn't have a particularly cold winter. There were other factors, of course, that were important last year for stopping that coming off. But that's fairly good news, what's happened across Russia for this winter, if you want something a little bit more colder and wintry. So that's it for the 5th update. Hope you found it interesting and informative. Next week we're doing a seasonal model roundup, the 2nd seasonal model roundup. We'll be getting the CFS, getting the JMA, the Russian model, Beijing Climate Centre, JAMSTEC, the NASA model, getting it all together, and we'll have a look at what they're showing for only the 2nd time this autumn. So that's next week. The 7th winter update will be in a couple of weeks' time, and I think that one, I'm not sure what we're going to do for that one actually, but I would suspect we may have a look at dry October. So that's something I want to look at. We are having a very dry October, and I think we'll probably have a look at that in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, this afternoon we're going to have a look at Christmas on the Christmas updates page, just for a bit of fun. And that's all for now. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.